Hello there dear friends. So in this video I'll be covering on how to make use of local storage in React. So let me just go through what does local storage even means. Local storage is basically it's like a database to store your data temporarily, and we're gonna make use of the browser's local storage, which is we can actually easily accessed. We are going to inspect here, and all you do just need to go to applications whenever you click on this, and you'll be having you need to go to this particular application. Let me just open this bit full, and you need to go to this particular storage called local storage, and this is where you'll be keeping your local storage data. And basically we're going to store our data temporarily in the browser, and the plus point, the pro of this particular the local storage is basically it, no matter how many times you refresh your page, this particular data won't be get lost, because the reason is because we are saving it as a database, not as a session storage. So that's the reason why we are actually making use of local storage, because there can be many ways this can be helpful. For example, it can be used in whenever we are doing a shopping, an online shopping, where we like to save our data of the products that we like to buy in the future. We're just going to save it temporarily, and those are such good examples where this particular local storage will be used. So let's see how are we able to make use of local storage in React. So let's go to our code, our VS code here. Let me just close this for a while. And this particular code here is actually the form data that we have been using for the past few tutorials that we have covered in the previous videos. This is where we fill up the inputs, and whenever we click on submit, it should say thank you for filling up all the details. So this is some simple form that I would like to use in this case. So what I'll be doing here is that I'll be making use of this form to input my credentials, my name, my first name and last name. And when I click on submit, I would like to save that data of my name and my first name and last name in the form of an object, and that object will be stored inside the local storage. So that's what I would like to do right now. So before that, let me just create like an object where I can actually store my first name and last name. So in this case, I know we have already have this form data here, but let's say I would like to have this is like an object here. So this object has already been created, but let's say I would like to have like an array of objects, an array of names, first name and last name. Like for example, user 1, user 2, user 3. There will be a lot of users in the future. So that's what I like to do. For example, I like to do like an array of users so that I need to make sure I need to create like a set function just to store users data like this. For example, const, and in this case I like to say users. Okay, so the function is going to be set users, and of course it's going to be use state like this. And of course, when we initialize an array, we need to make sure we put that square bracket as an initializer. Okay, this is how we're going to make use of this particular array called users. And in this array of users is going to be having a number of objects of form data. That's what I like to do here. So the next thing is that when I click on submit, I would like to have my name, the first name, last name to be listed here. So in that way we are able to know what are we actually saving. So how to do that is that let's go to our whenever when you click on submit button, which is handle submit here. Whenever when you click on handle submit, for example in this case, when you need to make sure you need to fill all the details. So that's the first condition. Second condition is where when we filled up both the data, both the fields like this. So I have to comment this for a while. And what I will do here, whenever when you click on submit, and I would like to store the name, first name and last name into this particular variable called users. So I'll have to go and here, I'll go here, and I will say set users, and I must make sure I fill up the inside the function I must be filling up the two variable two parameter, two parameters which are current, which will be the first one is going to be the current data of your set users. So in this case I'll have to put like dot followed by users. I'm spreading out all the detail of this particular array, and followed by the new data of your array. For this case, my new data is basically the form data. Form data is where I actually store the data when we how do you say input into these fields. So I'll have to place form data. Okay. So in this case, whenever when you click on submit here, your set users will be updated. And of course, let's see how are we. Let's just display on let's the name of the first name and last name that we submit. So in order to how do you say display those names, I would like to make sure that I have another div here, div of ul and li. Oh, sorry. I need to make sure I need to wrap everything under one roof or one div. For example, let's say this is the main div, and just need to make sure you put it inside the same div here. And below this form tag here, this is where we're going to place the list of users. For example, in this case, I'll have to start with ul, and this is where we're going to take the list particular. How do you say, like this is where we're going to map through the list of all the users that are actually being stored inside this set users. So how will I be able to do that is that I need to make sure I need to open a JavaScript expression like this, and of course you need to use users, because this set users is basically we are actually setting the name, setting the data of this form data directly into this variable called users. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to map through this particular variable. Of course, it's users, by the way, users dot map. Let's place it here, dot map, and it's going to be a function, and it's going to be a function, another function inside it, like this. In this case, it's going to be an arrow function, where I'll be mapping through by actually like having a list of all the the list is where we're going to display the name of the content. So in this case, the object I'll be using is user. So because we are actually mapping through each and every single array of these users. So in this case, inside the li, I'm going to have another JavaScript expression like this. And this inside this expression, I'll be having the name of the user. For example, user dot first name. And let's just see what's the actual output. So as you can see here, whenever you go to our our browser here, let me just fill up something with my first name here and my last name, and there you go. When you click on submit, your first name comes here because we have only stated first name. Let's go and add also my last name like this, and last name should be here. Sorry. Okay, first name and last name, and there you go. This is basically you are actually getting the data that's directly coming from the array of users. So what if I actually refresh this page, and there you go, you have nothing, because you're not storing inside your local storage yet. You're just making sure you're just saving it inside your users variable, which is not just enough to actually accomplish the fact on how are we able to make use of local storage. So let's since we are here, the next step is to actually learn about how to exactly store something inside the local storage. So in this case, let's go to our whenever when you click on handle submit, you need to make sure we save the data that's coming from this input fields directly into our local storage. So in this case, you need to put local storage dot set item. And this set item function will be having two variables. As you can see here, the key is actually the name of the the key is basically that identifies your local storage, and the value is the value that comes together with the key. So in this case, that's the first thing that is a key basically, and the key is going to be users. So the name of this is the name of the array that we're going to store, which is called users. And the followed by is actually the data of the users itself. So I must be exactly taking all of this, by the way. Just need to take whatever we put it inside set users, and I'm just going to take it and just going to place it inside here, followed by this. I mean the first, I mean it has to be the second parameter of this particular local storage. What I'm doing here, whenever when you click on submit, after we fill up both of these forms, we are actually storing this data inside directly into local storage. So let's click on save here, and let's go to our inspect element, and let's just open this a bit more bigger, and let's open application tab. And as you can see here, we have nothing yet, right? So what are you gonna do here? We're gonna make sure we have something. So by filling up just a random name, I'll be having the first how do you say, the first element of your local storage is basically which has a key of users and also a value of object. So as you can see here, in this case, my whatever I'm passing here is actually not actually being passed in a proper way, because the reason is because the values, this object is actually needs to be destructured into a JSON format, and that way we are able to make sure we are receive the like a readable data that's actually readable, not unlike this object. So how are we able to do that is to make sure we need to we actually make this this whole thing to be in the JSON.stringify function. In this case, I'll have to copy. I'll have to just need to remove this for a while. I mean, this only this, but by the way. So I'll remove this for a while, and I'll say JSON.stringify, and in that stringify function is where we're going to place that particular which is where we just did it here. So let's click on save, and let's remove this because we have not done it. We have not submitted anything yet. Let's click on refresh, and I'd like to place my, just put my name here, and I'd like to click on submit, and there you go. You have your name to be stored inside your local storage. As you can see here, let me just open this a bit. So as you can see here, we have just stored the data that's coming directly from your input fields, and we just directly putting it inside your local storage which has the key name of users. So this key name that users, it has an array called this is the array, by the way. So let's say if I click another time, and there you go, you have the same data that's coming that you are saving twice. Okay, so that's the basic idea. So what happens if I happens to click on refresh button? Let's see what happens. So as you can see here, your local storage has not haven't been affected anything yet, but then your main browser has been affected because there's nothing to be stored. You're not taking any data that's coming directly from local storage. And in order to do like this, we will be making use of use effect in this next part. So first of all, let's go to our code here. Let's go to our code, and then let's make use of use effect function like this. Okay, so I've just opened a snippet, use effect snippet. I'm just going to remove the most of this. We only be needing this empty use effect template like this. And of course, when we are calling use effect, we need to make sure we are also importing at the top like this. Okay, so just to make sure we are actually importing properly. So what we're gonna do inside use effect is that we need to make sure we are actually getting the data that is coming from the local storage, and we need to store it as a state. Yeah, that's the one. So let's go and do like that. For in this case, we have to say we need to make sure local storage dot. In this case, we're gonna get the items. So that get items is gonna be it's gonna be the name of the key, which is gonna be users. Okay. So also we need to make sure whenever we are actually getting this, it needs to be stored inside data. Let's say in this case I have to say let data equals to local storage get items users. So this data is actually the array that is coming from this particular local storage. And of course we need to make sure we need to update our set users also, like this. Set users, open the bracket, and just need to place this data inside here. Okay, let's click on save, and as you can see here, there's some error has been occurred, and let's check it before we move on. Let's go to console here. As you can see, there are a couple of errors. So as you can see, users.map is not a function, and then so as you can see here, users.map says it's not a function, and the reason is because whatever there's something to do with users data. So whenever when we are setting the items, we are actually passing the items as a JSON format. So whenever we're setting the items, we are actually passing it. So when we are retrieving the same data, we need to make sure we need to destructure it again. In this case, we're going to make sure in this case it's going to be string, but for this part of the video, we need to make sure we need to do the vice versa of this. So in this case, I like to make sure that instead of local storage directly getting this from users, I need to make sure I need to destructure like this also. I need to remove this for a while. Remove this. In this case, I need to say JSON dot in this case I'm not going to use stringify, but I'll be using parse instead. Inside the bracket I'll be placing the whatever content that it was there before, so like this. So let's click on save, and let's click on the let's refresh this, by the way, and there you go. Now you have these two items here, and you might be wondering where these two items are coming from, and you guessed it right. It is actually directly coming from the this is actually called your local storage that we have stored. So whenever we click on refresh here, this particular data will be always will be there, because this is directly coming from the local storage. So even when we don't have any data, let's just remove all the data that's inside our local storage, and when you click on refresh, and as you can see, there's some error here also, because there needs to be like a validator to make sure this use effect only runs when there is something stored inside our local storage here. So in this case I have to say local storage dot get item. So I need to make sure the item's name must be users. Only when there's something that is users, that is stored inside users, only when it is stored and it is true, then we must make sure we run this use effect function. So let's click on save, and there you go. Currently our local storage is empty, so that's why we don't have anything. So let's click on let's fill up my first name like this, and this is my first name. Let's add like a different name. In this case it's going to be a totally different name. So it's going to be boy UI submit, and you'll have your second list here. It says boy UI. And there you go, guys. This is the basic way of actually making use of local storage to store your data on your browser. So thank you guys for watching this part of the video, and hope you have learned something from this video, and let's catch up in our next session of tutorial. Thanks.